In the final minute, Bennett for the pocket, launches it to the end, good, touchdown, A.D. Mitchell.
Chase McGrath for the win for the Volunteers. From 40, on the way, knuckleball. He got it!
Welcome in to Bash's College Football Show, a jam-packed week for me personally, but that's okay. We are here still, research done, everything done. We are going to preview the week in week 6. I'm changing some things up, trying to make these videos a little bit shorter. We're going to try to have some in-depth previews of games, but we're going to condense the games. We're going to still have the biggest G5 game of the week, but we're going to, limit the criteria that we're going on. Bash's CFB show on TikTok. That's where you can find me. You can also find me on Twitter, Bash_CFB, Bash_CFB on Twitch if you want to interact with me live, because opinion plus discussion equals community. So comment down your opinions down below. Let's have a discussion about it and let's build a college football community. And how we do that is you simply comment, like, and subscribe. And again, be interactive on my TikTok, Bash_CFB show. All right, with that being said, we're going to get straight into the video. No time wasted. Maryland is on the road at Ohio State, a game that I'm going to be at. The Ohio State Buckeyes off of a bye. Last time we saw them, they had that thrilling victory against Notre Dame with the last-second touchdown by Chip Trayanum. Now, the run game for Ohio State needs to be a whole lot better, and bottom line is this: Kyle McCord needs to play a whole lot better. Otherwise, this game is going to go down to the wire, and there's no reason for me to believe that Ohio State's offense is going to be electric enough to put away Maryland as easily as they have done in some years past when it comes to the home games against Maryland. I know a lot of people mostly remember the close games, but let's keep in mind 21 blowout, 2019 blowout, 2017 blowout, 2015 blowout. All these years when Maryland came to Columbus, they have always gotten blown out. This could be the year where that changes. This could be the year where Maryland knocks off Ohio State. But we've said that so many times in the past. I do think Ohio State wins this game. But I think Maryland covers. I think this is one where you guys are going to see me without fingernails on Sunday morning. That's the bottom line. I think that Maryland is going to give Ohio State a heck of a game. This is going to be a tough, hard-fought battle. And Ohio State's physicality on defense and their defense just playing with that chip on their shoulder is what gets them the win. I don't know if Maryland's going to be able to throw the ball, but one thing's for sure, Mike Locksley is going to try to find a weakness, and he's going to try to exploit it. The question is, what does he think the weakness is? And the other question is, are they willing or able to exploit it? Is it properly diagnosed? If they attack a guy like Davison Igbinosun all day long, like it seems like some teams have more of a tendency to do, we could have a long day, because Ty Felton is not exactly the best wide receiver that Davison Igbinosun is going to go up against, the best wide receiver on Ohio State's schedule. And just because he is so far doesn't mean that that's something that Davison Igbinosun isn't trying to answer the bell to. Do they challenge Denzel Burke a little bit more? We will see. Jashante Jones is a guy to watch out for sure. Of course, it's a left corner, right corner type of situation. Most teams are like that, by the way, with Ohio State. So, Denzel Burke's going to be covering whomever, but is he able to have a Burke Island and lock it down on one side? That is going to be the big question. That is going to be the biggest answer that the defense needs to know, is if they're able to slow down this Maryland passing attack. But they're still going to be able to run the ball. Roman Hemby and Antoine Littleton are two really good players, and Roman Hemby out of the backfield has been the second leading receiver on this Maryland team. Daishis, the tight end, is also very good. But again, this cover, this spread, it's all going to come down to Kyle McCord and this offense. If they're able to put up points, I'm not sure if they do. So I'm going to take Maryland to cover. Ohio State, though, to win, and win relatively comfortable. But I think this is close for a very long time. Texas, Oklahoma, number 4 versus number 16. This is one that I'm going to have to play catch-up duty on as we see the Longhorns go up against the Sooners for the final time with both these teams in the Big 12. Of course, they are joining the SEC next year. The biggest thing I want to highlight here is the fact that Oklahoma has still not really found a run game, and Texas started to. Like Jonathan Brooks absolutely went off against Kansas team that I think is pretty solid, but a lot left to be desired when it comes to front seven play at Kansas. What they're going up against in Oklahoma's front seven, this is not the Lincoln Riley Oklahoma defense. This is a really good defense that we have to take seriously. But I still think there's vulnerability in that secondary for Oklahoma, and certainly going to have trouble moving the ball against Texas when it comes to that offense trying to light up that defense with one dimension. They're going to have to get this offensive line rolling. They're going to have to get somebody like Salchuk or Javante Barnes rolling in this game and play, unlike they have thus far to this point against much weaker competition. This is the only ranked opponent left on the schedule, according to the AP poll currently, that either of these teams have. It's Oklahoma's first one, Texas's second one. But I think Texas is the much better team, and the matchup also does not favor Oklahoma. I kind of like the under in this game, actually, and that's crazy to say with Red River, how last year went with the 49-0, even though that hit the under like a team put up 49, and then how the year before went with Kennedy Brooks having the game-winning touchdown and winning 54-48. But I think this is a lower scoring Red River rivalry, and I think Texas does end up somehow covering by about 10 points. I think they're going to win like 27-17 type of situation. I don't think this Oklahoma offense is as good as advertised, even if this Dylan Gabriel passing attack has been pretty prolific. The receivers are not amazing. My questions about Oklahoma was their pass game when it comes to receivers against good teams. And they've struggled more on the ground than through the air. I think this Oklahoma defense keeps them in the game, and I think their offense and Dylan Gabriel is good enough to stay within striking distance of Texas for most of this game. But I just think Texas is a much better team. I think Texas wins 27-17. Moving on, Missouri and LSU, 5.5-point favorites on the road. But the biggest thing that I'm going to bring up here, Theo Weiss, an underrated type of player in this game. But this LSU passing defense has been horrible, and Luther Burden by far is the favorite to win the Biletnikoff. This will be a massive opportunity for Luther Burden to make that Biletnikoff type of statement. Another Biletnikoff contender is Malik Neighbors, who has plenty of opportunities down the stretch, but he's the one who went off against Mississippi State. He's been absolutely on fire. And then Brian Thomas had 3 touchdown receptions last week in the loss to Ole Miss in heartbreaking fashion. But you play a racer of a game like you did in an absolute shootout, a hard, tough loss with a lot of energy on the road at Ole Miss last week, and then you have to turn around and go to Columbia. If Missouri wasn't undefeated, I would definitely be saying Missouri would win. Or if Missouri wasn't well thought of, I would definitely be saying Missouri would win. But in my opinion, I do think LSU wins a very close one. I'm going to take LSU to win this one 38-35. So Missouri does cover. Don't touch this game, though. I'm going to be rooting for Missouri, which is why I'm not touching this cover or anything like that. Just from a perspective of I was high on them in the preseason, and I want my takes to be validated at the end of the day, selfishly speaking. But B, I like what this Missouri team is doing, and I think that they could potentially be a contender in the East if their defense can kind of turn up the way that I expected them to turn up. But if LSU is able to win here, they are still in that SEC West race. They are not dead yet. Ole Miss still has a tough schedule ahead. Like, they still have to play A&M. They still have to play Georgia. This is not going to be an easy stretch for the Ole Miss Rebels, and that's the team who has the tiebreaker. So LSU, they're not done in the in the SEC West. They need to win this game, and I think this team knows it. I think they're going to find a way to gut out a 3-point win, but this LSU team, just maybe they're not that good. We're just going to have to see, but I'm going to take them to win by 3. Jaden Daniels has looked like a stud, by the way. All right, we go to the 3:30 slate with number 9 Alabama going on the road to number 25 Texas A&M. The interesting thing about this game, of course, is going to be the fact that this is the second game this year that Max Johnson has started or is going to start. Le'Veon Moss ended up looking really good last week to be able to fill in for that void left by the starting quarterback, Connor Wegman, getting hurt. But this is a guy, Max Johnson, who has a lot of starting experience, or at least a decent amount of starting experience in the SEC. He started last year for A&M. He started in 21 and 20 for the LSU Tigers. He is here. He is ready to go. His brother Jake Johnson, of course, tied in on the team. And he's got some weapons to throw to, like guys like Evan Stewart, for example. If Le'Veon Moss can continue that momentum in this defense, their run defense can lock down Alabama's rush defense. What this does is it basically makes this all come down to the big play hitting ability of Jalen Milroe in this passing attack. This is not an efficient passing attack. The intermediate throws are not there. The NFL throws are not there, but the deep ball is there. Jalen Milroe is hitting his deep balls, and that is where the game is going to be won or lost for Alabama. I just don't think they hit enough of them. I'm going with Texas A&M. I picked 2 losses for Texas or Alabama in the preseason. Texas was one of them. The other one was on the road at Texas A&M. Alabama's figuring things out. They are really good. I still think that they have chinks in their armor, and I think this is where they end up getting their second toe stub, if I may. And I think Alabama loses this game. Right now, that's how I have it, but this is really tight. Like I'm back and forth on this, but I'm just committing to it. I'm going to take Texas A&M in the minor upset. Moving on to Kentucky and Georgia. This line is up to 15 right now, and it's going to be a night game in Athens, and that's where it scares me. But this Kentucky run defense or run offense has been outstanding, and this Georgia rush defense has not been what we've expected it to be. So if we take a look at what Auburn did last week, my gosh, I keep having slip-ups here. What Auburn did last week was they did it in a one-dimensional manner, more of a one-dimensional manner than what you're going to get from Kentucky, and Barian Brown and Tavian Robinson, among others, in that wide receiver core out there for the Wildcats. But then you also got Ray Davis in this offensive line looking pretty dang good, and this defense looking outstanding. Georgia could mess around and lose this game. And I think it is maybe a real possibility that Kentucky finds a way to win this game. I think Kentucky's a really good team, but I do think Georgia wins. I think this is another game that Georgia might just sleepwalk through, but I'm not sure if they're dealing with complacency or if they're just not that good. I know for a fact that they are not the team that they have been the last couple of years. Does that mean they can't win a national championship, though? Absolutely not. Georgia was specifically last year levels above everybody else in college football. They had matchups that they could be exploited, in which teams could give them a game like an Ohio State or a sleepwalk at Missouri. But for the most part, nobody was even close to better than Georgia last season. The margins are a lot thinner, and that next best team is not as good as even last year's Ohio State or last year's Michigan. And at the end of the day, when you're looking at that as the landscape of college football, you can see a real possibility where Georgia might not be nearly as good as the last 2 teams, but yet they get that three-peat because they still are the standard in college football. Just because they're struggling to victories, it doesn't mean they're not the standard of college football. And that's the reason why they're number 1, and they're going to stay number 1 until they lose. Is this the last week that they're going to be number 1? Well, they got to lose for me to change that. And I have respect for Kentucky. I think they're going to keep this game close, but I got Georgia winning this game 34-24, pulling it out in the end. And 34 might be a lot of points. 24 might be a lot of points for Kentucky. I truly don't know what's going to happen in this game. And the only thing I'm convinced about is Kentucky's good enough to keep this close. Number 3, Michigan. They're going on the road to Minnesota. I wanted to preview this game because we get the Little Brown Jug here. It is going to be an interesting game to watch for. So first off, weather-wise, might get a little bit chilly up there. You got to watch out for maybe some chilly weather up there. But is that favoring Minnesota or is that favoring Michigan? It's not favoring either. These identities really fit this type of weather if it indeed is going to be chilly on Saturday night. Now, what I'm going to be watching for is I think this is really the first time that Michigan's going to go up against a run game that at least has been on fire lately, but certainly a pretty solid run game. So I'm going to be watching to see how they do against the run. I'm going to assume they're going to do pretty well. I'm not threatened by Ethan Kaliakmanis whatsoever, even though I feel like Corey Crooms, Daniel Jackson, and Chris Ottman-Bell, if he's even back, and then Brevin Spann-Ford, if these guys are talented players, they do not have the quarterback to distribute that ball. And they also do not have the front seven to be able to shut down Michigan for 4 quarters. I don't think really anybody in the Big Ten does, other than maybe Penn State and Ohio State, and the jury's still out on that because they didn't do it last year. Neither of those teams did it last year. So overall, I do think Michigan wins. I do think they cover. I think it's a late cover. I think they win by about 3 touchdowns or so. This just has like a 31-7 written all over it type of situation, or 34-10. They're going to struggle a little bit early. Maybe they might be trailing even at halftime, but certainly could have a close game at halftime, or they could just blow out Minnesota. But Michigan is a much better team. This Minnesota team has looked pitiful recently. They lost to Northwestern. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting when it comes to Minnesota. Terrible performance against North Carolina, where they had their chances in that game at the very least, and then an abysmal defensive performance against Ben Bryant and that Northwestern offense. So I'm taking Michigan to cover. But this is going to be an interesting road trip for Michigan, back-to-back, off of the heels of dominating Nebraska in Lincoln. They're getting a night game road trip in the Little Brown Jug, a rivalry game. Last time that I recall they were in this game at Minnesota was the COVID season, like the game 1 of the COVID season, and Minnesota pretty sure got blown out in that one, 42-17 or something like that. Fact check me on that. Number 12, Notre Dame. After beating Duke, an emotional win following an emotional loss, how do they respond against Louisville? Well, I think this team has maturity. And I'm not sure about Marcus Freeman as a head coach. I'm not even sure about Jared Parker as an offensive coordinator. I actually like what I've seen from Jared Parker as the O coordinator. And we know Al Golden and Marcus Freeman are collaborating for a pretty solid defense. And I think this is one of the best defenses in America. And specifically, this is one of the best cornerback rooms in America. And as long as they aren't emotionally drained from the last couple of weeks, they have a bye week next week. And that's something we cannot ignore. If they can get into this bye week, and I think they know just one more week, and then we can take a breather. Just one more week, and we can take a breather. It's going to come down to Cam Hart and Benjamin Morrison locking it down. This is a passing attack that's top 10 in yards per pass attempt. This is also a running game that has had their moments with Jawar Jordan. Now, last week, we saw NC State absolutely shut down Louisville's offense. You really think that Notre Dame can't do that? I think Notre Dame dominates this game, specifically on the defensive side. I got Notre Dame winning this game like 37-13. I really don't think this game is going to be all that close. Moving on. Fresno State, Wyoming. Guys, this is what I'm going to tell you right here. We got a gritty, tough defense in Wyoming with Andrew Peasley back at the quarterback position. They're off of a bye as well, I'm pretty sure. No, they're not. Who did they play last week? Oh, New Mexico. That's why it seems like a bye. And by the way, I think, was it New Mexico? Or was that somebody else? I'm pretty sure it was Wyoming who played New Mexico. Anyway, Fresno State now, they came off of a game against Nevada. That was also kind of a look-ahead spot for them because this is the big game of the week. Now, the other thing I'm going to mention here, Wyoming next week has Air Force. But are they looking ahead to Air Force, or do they get all of Fresno State's attention? I think they get or give Fresno State all their attention because of the fact that they are the ranked team. They are undefeated, and they are getting the attention from the media. At the end of the day, I think the wrong team is favored. I think the home team should be favored. I think Wyoming's going to win this game outright. I think they're the better team, and I think they're capable of slowing down this passing attack that Mikey Keene has going. And all respect to Jeff Tedford, I think this Fresno State team is pretty solid, but I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure if they can go on the road to Laramie and get a big win like this. Arizona and USC is the final game I'm going to preview here. And here's the biggest thing I want to mention that's going under the radar. It looks like, according to Jed Fish, that Jaden DeLora is on track to start this week. And Noah Fafita also looked pretty decent against Washington. They ended up covering, and their defense was, not necessarily the best, and they definitely got exposed to a certain extent, but they made plays to keep themselves somewhat in that game, and they only lost by 7 at home. And again, albeit at home, but they were playing with a backup quarterback in Noah Fafita, who's definitely not as experienced and seasoned as Jaden DeLora, even if he's just as talented, which some people might say he is. I think this game is close. I think Arizona puts up points, more points than last week, and USC is just going to have to win in shootout fashion, just like they did against Colorado. I think that USC wins this game. I think this game is going to be about a 49-35 type of game. But man, I see Arizona keeping this one tight, making USC fans nervous yet again, making them think about that defense yet again. So walk that line is going to look like this, as we are 37-39-2 after a somewhat of a redemption week last week. We still need to get above 500. It's a little bit smaller this week, so let's get into the 12 picks this week instead of the 16 like we've had the last couple of weeks. Wisconsin minus 13.5 against Rutgers. I was happy to get this under 2 touchdowns, but I think that they absolutely stifle that Rutgers team, specifically because I don't trust that they're able to throw the ball. And I think the way to beat Wisconsin this year is being able to throw the ball or just shut down their offense. Maybe Rutgers can shut down the Wisconsin offense. I just don't think they can do it enough. UTSA, they are minus 13.5 on the road at Temple. It's on the road at Temple. I get that, but this team is way better. Their defense is better than their stats tell, and we'll see if Eddie Lee Marburger gets this start or if it's going to be somebody else. But this UTSA offense now, they can get some points and they can score, in this Temple defense is pretty pathetic. Minus 13.5 for UTSA. Minus 3.5 for USF. USF here is a team that I'm going to be watching out for against UAB as a potential team to kind of expose somewhat of an emotional or kind of let down UAB team. They had the, rough game against Georgia. Not rough, like they played tough against Georgia, and then they played tough against Tulane, and then they kind of come down to earth. They go back at home, and I think that they end up kind of falling asleep at the wheel a little bit, and USF's able to expose that. Kentucky plus 14.5. I'm getting at plus 15 right now. Maybe I could have changed that, but I'm keeping it 14.5 for the locks purposes, but you can get it at plus 15 right now. Do that. Please do. Kentucky, I think, is definitely good enough to keep this close. I think that Georgia is needing to give me the burden of proof that they're going to be able to cover, not win, cover against some of these teams. And Kentucky is the best team that they've played thus far, and yet they've struggled with South Carolina and Auburn more. That doesn't mean they can't figure it out and not cover. It just means I'm not counting on them to do that, because I counted on them to do that last week and it didn't work. I counted on them to have it figured out against South Carolina, and it didn't work. Arkansas, Ole Miss, I'm going to take the over 63.5. That's a pretty lofty total, but I think that this is an absolute shootout, absolute dogfight. I think this one also, I almost locked up Arkansas plus 11.5, but I learned my lesson about locking up multiple things within one game that isn't a team total. I'm going to take the over 63.5. I think that this game is going to have a ton, and I mean a ton of points. Notre Dame minus 6, I talked about it. I don't think Louisville is going to have the success passing the ball that a lot might think, and I think that their defense is not quite that good. The NC State offense is absolutely a mess. They're benching Brennan Armstrong for MJ Morris right now. It is a disaster out there. I think Robert Anae is seriously just trying to figure things out with, and I think the perimeter talent is the big issue, but also Notre Dame kind of has that talent, but NC State doesn't have what Notre Dame has as far as running backs, yards after contact, and NFL tackles, and a great blocking tight end. Wyoming, plus 6.5. If you're not going to listen to me about winning outright and playing money line for Wyoming, take the plus 6.5. It's going up. Vegas, I'm going against the grain. I'm fading the public in this game because I feel like Wyoming is the better team. Texas Tech, minus 1.5. They're on the road at Baylor. I think they're the much better team. Specifically, their defense is just much better. Baylor, after getting embarrassed against Texas, ended up having an emotional thriller of a game at UCF. So having that cross, halfway across the country, I guess, kind of from midway through the country to the East Coast type of trip to UCF in conference play, and having an emotional game like that where you had the Timmy McLean play and he ended up throwing it, getting caught, but they missed short the long field goal. I think Texas Tech is up for a massive, and I mean massive, opportunity to just embarrass Baylor in front of their home fans. Arizona plus 22 is a lock, as well as their over 24.5. I hate that I'm getting it at 24.5. Last week, I caught it right as that number was going down, and I caught it at 24, though I wish I would have caught it at 21.5. But I think Arizona could score in the 30s here against that USC's vulnerable defense, and we already talked about how I think they're going to be able to score enough to cover. So Colorado over 32.5. They're playing at Arizona State. I think this Arizona State defense is not bad at all, but I do think this Colorado team, they found the run game a little bit against USC. Their offensive line is still really a problem, I guess, but I'm not sure if Arizona State's going to expose them, and I'm going to count on Colorado to score at least 35 points in this game. And then Oklahoma State, I'm taking under 20.5. I'm hoping that Chris Kleiman comes through for me. I'm hoping that this Kansas State team doesn't end up going on the road and laying an egg on a Friday night. That's the only danger point in this. But I think Oklahoma State is so bad offensively and so inept that I don't think they score any more than 20 points. So I'm going to take the under at 20.5. All right, there's Walk That Line. There's my weekly picks. And I want to just thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think of all these games and any of your teams. If they're up, comment down below and let me know what team you root for. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next.